Today on Cyberwork, Tyler Cohen Wood shares her journey as a senior intelligence officer for the DIA, overseeing cyber risk for AT&T, and writing the book Catching the Catfishers. We talk online privacy, implementing complex systems, healthcare security shortcomings in the age of COVID, and her pre-cyber years with blue hair working in the record industry. That's all today on Cyberwork. Also, I want to tell you about a new hands-on training series called Cyberwork Applied. Every week, expert Infosec instructors and industry practitioners teach you a new cybersecurity skill and show you how that skill applies to real-world scenarios. You'll learn how to carry out different cyber attacks, practice using common cybersecurity tools, follow along with walkthroughs of how major breaches occurred, and more. And it's free. Go to infosecinstitute.com/learn or check out the link in the description and get started with hands-on training in a fun environment. It's a new way to learn crucial cybersecurity skills and keep the skills you have relevant. That's infosecinstitute.com/learn. And now, on with the show. Welcome to this week's episode of the Cyberwork with Infosec podcast. Each week, we talk with a different industry thought leader about cybersecurity trends, the way those trends affect the work of Infosec professionals, and offer tips for breaking in or moving up the ladder in the cybersecurity industry. Today's guest, at the risk of overusing a cliche, has really done it all. Tyler Cohen Wood is a cyber authority with 18 plus years of highly technical experience. As a cyber intelligence, national security expert, three-time author, and public speaker, Tyler is relied on for her wealth of knowledge and unique insights. She served with the Defense Intelligence Agency as a senior intelligence officer, where she developed highly technical cyber solutions and made recommendations significantly developing and changing critical cyber policies and directives affecting current and future intelligence community programs. She helped the White House, DoD, federal law enforcement, and the intel community thwart many cyber threats to the USA. She is the author of the book Catching the Catfishers and is currently working on a healthcare security venture. There's a chance that we're going to have more to discuss than we have time for in one episode, and I have loads of questions for Tyler. So let's just get into it, and we'll see where our conversation leads us. Tyler, welcome to Cyberwork.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Chris.
I want to start at the beginning, of course. Looking through your work background, it's pretty clear that you've been interested in IT and cybersecurity for quite some time. So what was it that first drew you into the field?
Well, I was always kind of a nerdy kid. I was really into Star Trek and sci-fi. And when I was in college, this was the very, very late 90s.
Okay.
We didn't have cybersecurity like we do today.
Right.
And, at the time I was very into to music. So right after I graduated, I moved to New Orleans, where I was a DJ at a radio station.
Cool.
And I worked for a record label and a nightclub.
Wow.
I had blue hair, the whole 9 yards. It was great.
We would have gotten along famously. That sounds exactly like my path at the time. That's so cool.
Really? That's really cool.
Oh yeah, I was a college DJ, and then I worked a DJ at the UFC station, even though I wasn't a student there. Yeah, all that stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So was there a certain connection? You said the sort of sci-fi aspect was a through line, but was there something about going from sort of music and that interest into sort of computers and tech?
The radio station that I worked for in New Orleans got bought, and they were changing formats, and I had sort of gotten very interested in computers. So I decided that I would move to San Francisco because it was sort of at the beginning of the .com phase. And I knew that they would hire anyone that wanted to learn because they needed to have talent. And, I really started off at the bottom. I started off as a sysadmin, and very soon discovered that I really liked complex systems and helping people protect themselves. And that was sort of what led me into cybersecurity from sysadmin.
Okay. Because I was going to say your work history and bio act almost as kind of like a pathway to the creation and use of what are now commonplace jobs. So, if I looked at it, and in 2003, it says you conducted internal and customer security vulnerability assessments using ethical penetration testing. And by 2004, you were working as a digital forensics instructor. And 2 years after that, you were doing the same thing for NASA. So am I right in thinking that this is right around when the notion of digital forensics was just starting to become well known?
It was. And, the lab that I would work for in 2004, it
Hmm.
really got its start in 1999, like
Hmm.
right
Right. You were at
before
the ground
where I
floor
was
then.
in there. Yeah, I was kind of on the ground floor. And, I've always been one that likes to investigate things. And forensics just really fit what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I really loved it a lot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So how did NASA enter into that? Like you said, you were working in complex systems. So was there something about the work you were doing at the time that attracted them to you, or were you actively seeking to work with them and sort of showing what you were doing as a model?
Well, I actually worked for the Department of Defense Cybercrime Center twice,
Okay.
and NASA was in the middle. And I know it sounds crazy. It was not really the decision was based mostly on, actually, it was based on, I had a 3-hour commute each
Uh,
way
mm-hmm.
sometimes.
Wow.
So I wanted to have less of a
Yeah.
commute. So, and at the lab, a lot of the incident response was done for us. So this was kind of a good way to really get incident response under my belt as well.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. So yeah, yeah. So can you sort of talk about like your sort of progression through those different things, the different aspects that you were doing to, so like, going from incident response and digital forensics to becoming cyber branch chief and then deputy division chief science and technology for the DIA. Like, what were some of the sort of milestone projects that you were working on, or just sort of like skill level ups or whatever that you were doing that allowed you to jump so quickly into these high ranking positions?
Well, I've always taken my job very seriously,
Hmm.
but I still know how to have fun.
Hmm.
And I wish that I could say I had strategically planned for it to go the way that it did, but that's just not true.
Okay.
That's just sort of how it progressed. I think one of the most important things was also building these strong relationships. And actually, that's how I got the job at DIA, because one of the agents that I had supported at the Department of Defense Cybercrime Center, he actually had the position at DIA, and he was kind of afraid they would fill it with someone that didn't have any cyber knowledge at all. So he kept saying, apply, 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 apply. And
Okay.
finally I said, yes, I did. And, it was a great progression. It really took, it was kind of like going from forensics to the other side of the coin.
Okay.
So sort of anti-forensics.
Okay. Can you talk a little more about that? Like, how did your sort of job responsibilities change, and sort of what you were looking at?
Well, it changed pretty dramatically
Okay.
because now I was no longer doing forensic cases, but leading a team that was developing a lot of the gadgets and a lot of the technologies, keeping our special forces safe when they were on their missions. And I can't go into too much detail, but I don't know. I guess it's kind of like the person who developed all those cool gadgets that James Bond had.
Yeah. Yeah. You were Q.
And I mean, I had my hand in so many different things. I was on a
Really?
lot of working groups. I helped pen some of the DoD initiatives and directives that are still being used today.
Did you have certain sort of specialties in terms of like the knowledge or experience that you had at the time, and how did you leverage that into that job?
Well, the thing I love the most about this job was coming up with bizarre, complex systems that are actually very simple to use.
Hmm.
And ways, very unique ways to make something act like it's supposed to and appear as if it's supposed to, but also have other abilities. And
Okay.
I really like out of the box thinking, and I like thinking about futuristic things, and also piecing together, taking a problem and finding a solution, no matter how weird that solution may be, finding a solution.
Right. And now I want to sort of break into the notion of complexity, because I imagine a complex system in 2004 might be on a different scale than, with the sort of intense complexity that cybersecurity and connected systems and IoT and stuff and big data and whatever have provided in the past 15 years. Like, can you speak to the notion of what sort of complex systems were like in 2004 versus the sort of same things happening now?
Well, I went to DIA. I was there from 2010 to the end of 15.
Okay.
So the systems were, I mean, obviously things have changed from 2016 to 2021, but a lot of the same responsibilities are there, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of the developments that our team created are still being used.
Okay. So yeah, so you were definitely in the height of it at that point. So and how does that sort of compare to what people think of as sort of creating a more conventional security system? Like, can you sort of walk me through what a little bit, like just a real ground level thing of like what a complex system looks like versus like the types of systems that would be normally created by someone in say not a DIA type job?
Well, again, and I'm trying not to give away too much because this is kind of a
Yeah.
difficult question to
Okay. Okay.
answer. But I'll put it this way. I'll give you a hypothetical.
Mm-hmm.
If you had, say, Chris, you were going to a country that had a very heavy cyber presence,
Okay.
and you knew that you were being watched to make sure that you maintain the your integrity that you were supposed to be maintaining, but you would essentially be able to hide in the noise. And there's a
Okay.
lot of moving parts that go along with things like that. And honestly, I think that's much more difficult to do today than it was in 2016.
Interesting. Just because of there's a lot more countermeasures.
There's a lot more countermeasures, but also in terms of technological growth, I almost can't believe how quickly things move.
How so?
Well, I mean, I remember when IoT was kind of this 2015, 16, IoT was kind of getting big, and telematics, and well, actually telematics was before that, but so all of these different systems were starting to kind of come online, and we had a lot of personal devices around us at all times, but we have significantly more of those now, and there are just more
Mm-hmm.
threat vectors. It's just the
Right.
more technology that you have, the just statistically, the higher probability of an incident is going to be there.
Right. Okay. So to move from obviously it's a fairly sensitive topic of the IA and so forth. After this, you became the director of cyber risk management for AT&T. Could you talk a little bit about what it's like analyzing and creating solutions for a worldwide mega corporation like this, and does that sort of scale of things change versus attempting to work with smaller companies or networks?
Well, it's a really interesting question because I have to say there were a lot of similarities working in big government and also going to a major corporation. And you're just dealing with a lot of some of the same. I don't want to call it bureaucracy, but you just have to know the steps that you can take so that you're making sure that you're always kind of staying within your lane. And
Hmm.
it was it was similar, um, and it, but different at the same time,
Yeah.
because it's a more you can talk about it. In fact,
Yeah.
people used to ask my husband if he hated the fact that I couldn't tell him what I did, and he's like, "No way, she can't complain about work. It's great."
You find the upsides where you can.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so it sounds like most of the difference in terms of working with something on that scale is, like you say, some of the um, sort of the clearances and and sort of working around the sort of built-in like provisions and so forth of like a large
Mhm.
corporation like that.
Well, whenever you have a giant corporation, you're going to have a lot of other smaller businesses that have
Yeah.
been
Yeah. You're
incorporated.
working with a whole ecosystem, I suppose.
Right. And that's kind of a difficult it's a difficult way to work, but as you're continuing, you're starting to sort of remove those temporary band-aids and putting genuine solutions in place so that
Mm.
all of the different systems run together.
Okay. Gotcha. Is there any sort of aspect of that job that you can talk about in terms of things that you implemented or that were particularly interesting or that you're especially proud of?
Um, I think some of the things that I've worked on may be even more confidential than
Mm,
when I
mhm.
was at DIA.
Okay, gotcha. No worries. So yeah, I guess to move from that, from all these, because you have these confidential or these kind of like high level, large corporate or large, nationwide things. You moved from all of this to becoming a keynote speaker and private consultant primarily. Can you sort of talk about what the impetus was to make this massive change? Was there a certain feeling of like you'd gone as far as you could in this particular direction, and you wanted to sort of use your insights otherwise?
Well, I wrote Catching the Catfishers
Okay.
um, in 2014. So I was still at DIA, and I started doing a lot of media and speaking about the book, and kind of moving into doing cybersecurity keynotes, and doing that as a senior intelligence officer, especially at the level that I was at. It just gets really tricky.
Hmm.
So it was one of those things where I had to make that decision, which way do I want to go? And it was very hard for me to leave
Yeah.
DIA. I loved it there. But it was very important to me to be able to reach a larger audience on kind of a grander scale. So that is why I switched.
Okay. So what types of projects and events do you work on now in this capacity? Like what is your average workday as sort of a go-to security consultant or, at large cybersecurity authority look like?
Well, I think it kind of it looks sort of like I see the future of work looking like, where
Hmm.
you're working on different projects. So not necessarily working for, one company where you go in, you do your job, and you're always focused on that particular job. Now it's more presentations, doing writing, and also, working within the cybersecurity influencer community too. And
Hmm.
there's just a lot of different things. And I am starting a new venture, which is taking up quite a bit of time, which we'll
Okay.
go into,
Yes.
I think, in a later question.
Absolutely. Can you give any tips to people who are working for a company right now, but that might want to go into business for themselves as a consultant in cybersecurity? What are some pitfalls that you have learned to avoid over the years?
Well, when you're working for yourself, you really have to be passionate about what you're doing. You also have to be very self motivated. um, and if you're like me, you have to make sure that you can kind of stick to a schedule. Because I like to do lots of different things at the same time.
Right.
And, I've learned that it's easier to stick with one thing at a time and then kind of move on to whatever the next thing is.
Hmm. Okay, so among other things, you definitely need the ability to sort of create your schedules sort of rigorously, so that it doesn't
You
you
do.
don't find yourself sort of chasing down rabbit holes and
Right.
so
Well,
forth.
and also, I think it's really important to sit down and have a very honest conversation with yourself and really plug out your strengths and weaknesses,
Hmm.
so that you can, if you're building partnerships, you can make sure that the people that you're bringing onto your company help fill those gaps that you may have.
Hmm.
And it's very hard to do a business sort of in a vacuum. You really do have to work with other people. So a lot of it's
Right.
relationship building,
Yep.
um, and a lot of it is being flexible too. and understanding that the idea that you have in the beginning, it may not be exactly what you hope for. So you have to be flexible, but you also have to pick your battles and pick your battles wisely, because there will be some things that you have to stand your ground on.
Yeah. Now, do you have sort of a support staff that helps you with sort of bookings and scheduling and all that?
I do. I work with a speakers bureau for that.
Okay. Okay. So let's talk about the book a little bit. In 2014, you published "Catching the Catfishers: Disarm the Online Predators, Pretenders, Predators, and Perpetrators Who Are Out to Ruin Your Life." It's a book you described as being even more relevant now. So, can you talk about the book for people who haven't read it or don't know about it, and how the world of online privacy has changed since 2014?
Sure. So when I wrote the book, when I was at DC3, Department of Defense Cybercrime Center, I worked intrusion cases, which are cases where something's been hacked, and then I also worked major crimes cases. And the major crimes cases really had an impact on me. Those involved exploitation of children, um, sexual assault,
Mm-hmm.
strangely enough, suicides.
Mm.
Because that it has to be investigated. But there was some sort of, and then fraud, embezzlement, that kind of stuff.
Right.
But just seeing the things that I saw while I was there, it just, I really wanted to find a way to teach kids and parents how to protect themselves in this online domain in a very easy to understand way. And I looked to see if there was some kind of book that did that, so that I could recommend it to people, but there wasn't.
Right.
So I wrote it. And I have this kind of weird forecasting, future casting, I guess, ability where the things that I'm talking about, they tend to be a little bit before their time. And this book came out in 2014, and I talked about the privacy that you're giving up when you're using social media sites. Talked about the terms of service, but I warned about a Cambridge Analytica type event
Mm-hmm.
happening.
Mm-hmm.
And also when we're dealing with the online persona and vetting if who you're talking to is actually who you say they are, or who they say they are. All of those techniques are still very relevant today.
Yeah. Now, do you what sort of to speak to that? Obviously, people are always every day I go on Facebook and I see people who are still playing the "What Harry Potter character are you" game or whatever, where they're giving their identity off to third party groups. Like, what are some of the more egregious things that you see happening even now that we quote unquote should know better? Like, what are some of the worst cases that you think are really sort of still causing the worst of the problems?
Well, I think I think that we have some issues because there's a lot of information that's already out about every individual, and some of it is even if you don't have a Facebook or a social media account, there's still information that's being collected on you based
Right.
on someone who puts up your picture, or like my husband doesn't have his own Facebook account, so I post pictures of him, we talk about him, and all of that information is being recorded. And even though they strip the EXIF data, which is metadata, it's information about where the photograph, about the camera that took the photograph,
Yep.
including the exact geographic location, even though they strip that out for what's posted, they still keep that information, and they tell you what they're doing. But the difference between 2021 and 2014 is that it's not just enough to read the terms of service. If you want to have a professional life and a professional profile, you have to use these different types of social media outlets. And we're seeing right now that there's a lot of calls to action with a lot of the technology companies, in terms of who owns that data,
Right.
and what can they do with that data.
Yeah. Now, do you have any sort of quick tips? Like you said, a lot of this stuff we can't get away from using, social media anymore, especially if you're, in a public position. Like, you have to have, a Twitter presence, or you need to have this or that. So what are some things that you recommend sort of across the board that people don't always do to make themselves safer in this regard?
Well, one of the things that I would highly recommend, and this isn't necessary, I don't think this is a safety issue, but I've noticed a lot of people getting into political fights, and it's
Mm-hmm.
almost political wars.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always very cautious about that, because I just don't I just think that if someone is looking at your profile, and this may not actually even be true, because 2020 really threw everything up into
Yeah,
upheaval. But
yeah,
prior to
anybody's
2020,
game. Yeah, right.
I would have said, don't do that, because, there are employers that are looking at your future
Right.
employers looking at your social media, and this
Right.
stuff is, even if you delete it, it still exists somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But, 2020's kind of thrown things for a loop.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of the political landscape, or the sort of work from home landscape, or just the way that sort of we operate in the online world.
All the above.
Yeah. Yeah.
All the above. And, we still don't know what things are going to look like. And I think we're going to see a lot of changes, and in this space too.
Mm-hmm. Now, I mean, this is obviously, it's a topic that's been done to death for the last 10 months or whatever, but do you have any thoughts on how privacy and online literacy have changed, or have to change, in the wake of COVID-19 and the mass work from home push?
Well, I think privacy and online literacy, they're more important than ever, especially in the era of COVID. And
Mm-hmm.
I believe general attitudes toward privacy are changing due
Yeah.
to kind of this new normal that we're in. And also, with working from home, it's just sort of changed us a little bit. And, there's a heightened awareness around online privacy, but people still freely give away personal information online. And sometimes, you have to, sometimes you may have to.
Yep.
But and phishing is still rampant, and
Oh, yeah.
hackers are starting to use AI and machine learning to really ramp up their attacks. But I think in terms of privacy, and bringing on contact tracing and other COVID tracing capabilities, I think we're going to have there's a war basically being waged between privacy and trying to contain this pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere in the middle is where I think things will fall out. And I do think that, HIPAA is going to have to change too. There are going to have to
Yeah.
be some changes to it.
Right.
I don't know if you knew this, but during in March, when, we were really aware of the pandemic, and people started moving to telehealth, a lot of the HIPAA penalties for telehealth were lifted.
Hmm.
So I think
Yeah.
we're going to see a lot of changes in a lot of the structures, that we hold dear.
Right.
And I will say this too: I'm I love technology, but it also kind of scares me a little bit, because
Mm-hmm.
I've been trained my entire career to be paranoid and look for problems and issues and holes.
Right.
And I think that I may be a little bit paranoid, but I do think that, we're going to move to, a lot more managed services.
Okay.
And I think we're going to see an explosion in home cybersecurity as well.
Okay. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like, what are the sort of strategies or products that you see on the horizon for people, because we're all basically our own office at this point.
Well, we're going to see more products for securing your phone, and
Yep.
more AI type products warning you. Do you really want to let this emoji app have access to
Yeah.
your camera, your microphone,
Right.
or other types of things? I think we'll start seeing a lot more programs that actually help us with that.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to start seeing a lot more helper apps. That's I guess what I would call them, that would do that for you. Would say,
Okay.
"Hi, Tyler. Did you know that this application is doing this? Are you sure you want for it to
Yeah.
have this access?" So
Right.
we're going to start seeing a lot more helper apps, not just for exercise, health, weight loss. We're going to start seeing them for security as well, cybersecurity.
I think that's good. When you hear about people, being exploited by, a backdoor or this kind of thing or that kind of thing, like a lot of times they're like, I didn't have the slightest idea that this was going on. And how would you, like you say, if you're not reading, even if you are reading terms of service, it's not always written to be the most, translucent, or what have you. So that seems like that would make a good sense to have sort of a backup like that. And you see it a little bit now with like malware, programs installed in your browser, and it'll bounce you back from a site and say, not there,
Not
so
there.
no, oh no, not that. But so yeah, so you think that's going to be a pretty commonplace thing, is that they're going to be, things that'll be checking your system and saying,
Yes.
you're losing a lot of data this way, or your camera's being looked at through this other thing.
Exactly. More and it'll, a lot of it will be more based on also the home network, because
Right.
let's say this vaccine works great, everyone, everything's great. Well, people have now seen that we can work
Yep.
remotely, and I think that that's going to open a lot of doors, for a lot of businesses that are doing home security type of applications.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I mean, can you talk, going one step further from that, about the general sort of muddling of the work life balance? When everything is at home now like this, do you have any sort of thoughts on how to sort of, especially if you only have, the one computer, and you're sort of like splitting time with it, or your kids using your work tablet to watch SpongeBob or whatever, like what do we do to sort of keep these things as separate as possible?
Well, I mean, I always recommend using a separate network for any of your work devices.
Right.
Um, and but also knowing that, and also making sure if you have any personal assistant devices, that you unplug it or you turn off the recording features, when you're actually in a business meeting, because we still want to protect intellectual property.
Yeah.
And I mean, I look at a lot of devices and I see insecurities, I see holes, but that's not entirely fair, because a lot of these systems, that's another thing, is that there's been so much innovation in cybersecurity and in so many other verticals in just this year alone,
Hmm.
because of necessity.
Right.
If you can, I would highly recommend that you do not let your kids play with your work computer or
Yes.
your work tablet. In fact, that's probably in, if you had to sign a conduct contract, for your employer, I would assume that is
Yeah.
language that would probably be in there.
Right. Yeah. No, that's definitely one where I don't think you would be
Well,
able to get away with saying, I didn't know I couldn't do that.
well, and hackers, they're very good, and they know what they're targeting.
Hmm.
And having your kids at home in school, that's another method of entry into
Right.
your network.
Yeah. So at the start of the show, I mentioned the name of the show is Cyberwork, and I'm enjoying talking about your cybersecurity journey. I was wondering if you have any tips or suggestions for professionals who want to sort of move up the ranks in similar ways that you did in forensics and risk management, or just start down the road in the first place. What are some soft skills, hard skills, certifications that you recommend for people just getting started now?
I think the CISSP is a really good one to start with. For new graduates, one of the biggest problems I think that they face is that cybersecurity has so many different specialties, and there may be a specialty that someone would be very good at that they may not even know exists,
Mm-hmm.
like forensics. How do you get from, doing to something like forensics? Well,
Right.
first you have to know that forensics exists and that it would be something you're interested in. And, in terms of soft skills, flexibility, um, really working hard, and also making sure that if say you do know you want to get into forensics, well, go online, go on LinkedIn, go on Twitter, start, exchanging messages with people that, you respect or would hope they would mentor you. And you can certainly ask, would you be interested in mentoring me? And
Right.
there's also some really great groups that mentor kids, and they also mentor professionals that are trying to, whether they're in cyber, trying to move to something else,
Hmm.
or from a completely different career, move into the cybersecurity field. And I will tell you, one thing that every single person trying to switch the career moving into cybersecurity has on their side is there is an enormous shortage of people in these positions, and they need to be filled. And kind of like how I just, with my blue hair moved to San Francisco, I was able to get, my first job. I think that trend is back now because we do have such a shortage of
Right.
skilled people.
Yeah, one of the things that I keep hearing from other guests is that people outside of a tech field can still do really, really well in cybersecurity. That the tech can be taught as long as you have the sort of problem solving skills, or the drive, or the communication skills, or the ability to, explain your concepts to other people and so forth. And the other thing, mic there. The other thing that I've really noticed is that even like people who are like heads of companies and high level, all kinds of ranking executives are all saying like, hey, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Like, the cybersecurity community is astonishingly open in terms of like helping people out who are just getting started, it seems like.
I mean, I've noticed that. I've noticed that too, and I think it's a really, really great community to be involved in, because there is a lot of compassion. And I mean, I've just been pretty lucky, I guess, that the majority of people I've worked with and have known, they've been very helpful, and they do want to help other people get into the field because they understand the shortage. But you are right. I mean, for something like forensics, you want to make sure that you have the right kind of soft skills,
Right.
before kind of going into it. And for that, you really sort of need a investigative mindset,
Yeah.
where you like, solving problems, figuring out, well, who did it, but also doing the work to get there, because you can't just go from starting off to being, a top level person overnight.
Yeah, you're not going to be trying your first case in court in a week. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we talk about in terms of the skills gap, and believe me, we've you can take it, if you take a drink every time we mention skills gap on this show, you'll be in the hospital. But oh, there you go, take a drink. So one of the things that's often brought up, and is that some of the hiring pool is maybe from, shall we say, somewhat of a homogenized place, and that there are not as many women and minority candidates that are coming in, or they feel sort of intimidated or what have you, or don't think it's for them. Do you have any tips for any women entering the world of security, or sort of attracting women into cybersecurity?
Well, yes. And I think I know there's a lot of cybersecurity women organizations now, that are really helping more women get into these roles. And, diversity is something that's very big, and it's something that kind of has to happen too, because when you have diversity, you can see things from different perspectives, because you have different sets of eyes on a problem. And really, with cybersecurity, one of the things I love the most about it is the kind of we're all in this together attitude that most people that I've worked with or worked for in the community, that they have that attitude, and they do want to help.
There's definitely seems to be a sort of a tidal shift, especially in the last couple of years, where
yes,
people are not so much deciding whether or not we need to be more diverse, but it's like, how are we going to fast track this so it actually happens?
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And again, it's just the being aware of what the opportunities actually are, and that's something that we're starting to see more of. But it would be good. I want someone to create a great infographic that just shows all the different possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah. All the scenarios, what are
Mhm.
the sort of the better things that happen as a result and so forth.
Yes.
So, you teased it a little bit before, and I want to sort of talk more about it. But you're currently working on a new healthcare venture, and we talked about HIPAA a little bit, and healthcare security, and can you sort of tell me a bit about this venture, how it connects to healthcare security at the moment, and some of the things that you want to talk about with regards to like the way HIPAA is doing its business?
Sure. Well, there's going to have to be some changes to HIPAA, especially with if contact tracing is something that we
Yeah.
start
Oh my
doing.
gosh, yes.
If people are now being required to prove vaccination or COVID test to get on a flight, there's just going to have to be changes because data owners of this information they haven't been flights do not typically have healthcare information on them, but now they will, like
Right.
airlines. So we're going to see some shifts there. So in 2018 I got sick and went through the healthcare system, and I started seeing some issues, and in particular with my case, because what I have crosses specialties.
Mm.
And started kind of developing some charts to help the doctors along the way. And you know I really wanted to do this system, and eventually it is this system that actually helped diagnose me.
Mm.
Obviously confirmed by doctors, but
Right.
and I I suspect that I may not have gotten a diagnosis if I hadn't been testing logic statements for this system.
Wow. Okay. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? How that would be sort of
Sure.
implemented on like a large scale?
Sure. So the what the venture is, what the system is, and I can't talk a ton about it
Okay.
because we're still waiting on a patent, which I
Yes.
literally just got. I told you I got the discovery paperwork
That's awesome.
just 5 minutes before we got on this call.
Wow. Yeah. You are literally hearing about this. I've got a scoop here. It sounds like very quiet
So
scoop, but yes.
so I started realizing almost immediately that there's just a kind of siloed approach
Hmm.
in healthcare, and really being able to bring together the best of the healthcare system and the best of AI and machine learning, to really up the ante in terms of medical knowledge that we have. And I mean, you can break it down to its most simplistic concept, which is um, you may not know the answer to what your health condition is or your problem, but somebody knows the answer.
Yep.
It's just or a couple of somebodies when put together have the answer. So it's just a matter of bringing together the right people.
Okay. Now, to that end, I want to talk about the sort of security aspects of these things, and specifically about HIPAA. Yeah, back in the late '90s, I was working for the Chicago Medical Society, and we were right at the point where HIPAA was just being uttered by doctors who had been still working in typewriters and paper up to that point, and we were trying to get them, to upgrade off of Windows 3.1 or whatever. And so I haven't really kind of followed sort of the arc of HIPAA in the meantime. But I mean, obviously, we have a lot of articles on our site about healthcare security and so forth. Can you tell me a little bit about the way HIPAA works now, what you think is restrictive about it, the ways that you think it needs to change, and it almost sounds like it's maybe overcompensating at the moment right now to account for certain things, because it was a real wild west in terms of like sharing data, in the late '90s and stuff like that. So it almost sounds like they might have like clamped down too hard, maybe, in your opinion.
I don't know if it was that they clamped down too hard. Um, I think that it was working pretty well,
Hmm.
but COVID threw everything into a
Oh yeah,
tailspin.
yeah.
And it has really changed everything. And I think, and there's gonna have to be some changes. There just will, because to be able to do the contact tracing, or to continue doing telehealth, there's just going to be some changes. We're going to see a lot of transformation in this industry. We've already started seeing it, but we're going to see a lot more in this coming year.
Yeah. It sounds to me like it almost might require something similar to like GDPR for healthcare, in the sense of like really strictly enforcing like the right to be forgotten and stuff, because there's so much like you say, if we're contact tracing, you're going to be harvesting just a bajillion amounts of data, and you're going to have to find a way to sort of safely dispose of it, I imagine, at a certain point, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you something. This was one of the things that I've learned over my career, is that just because I am paranoid, and I've been trained to be paranoid, to look for potential holes in every single capability, that doesn't equate that people that are not in cybersecurity, they just want to do their jobs, and they just want to live their lives. And um oftentimes, if you ask people, well, what do you think about cybersecurity? How often do you think about it? I actually did this. I asked a lot of people in different verticals, and all of them really came back with very similar responses. And that response was, I only think about cybersecurity when it's inhibiting me from doing my job.
Mm-hmm.
So somewhere in between, we can't be so paranoid that we've taken the steering wheel, the wheels, the seats off of the car, because no one's going to steal it, but you can't use it either. So kind of finding that common ground.
Yeah. Has there been, and again, I keep going back to the sort of the doctor side of this, that, a lot of the initial HIPAA, regulations were like the main stick point was, like you said, people just want to do their jobs. But in this case, like doctors were so overstretched anyway, that the idea of like implementing this new system, or this new sort of oversight system, was just impossible for them to sort of like sneak into a 16-hour a day. I mean, do you have any thoughts of like how we're going to make these changes without sort of disrupting service across, multiple industries?
Well, I think you're going to see managed compliance, managed service companies, which you're already starting to see, that deal strictly with compliance. You're already starting to see specific cloud vendors creating, healthcare clouds.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think compliance may end up being something that's kind of shifted off frequently to, a third party.
Right.
But again, there are going to be changes, because especially like you said, the healthcare professionals they're overworked, they're exhausted.
Yeah.
They're dealing with something that we've never really seen before.
Right.
And I'm sure that at the end of a 10-hour day, or 12 or 14 or 16-hour day, that's probably not something that they're thinking about. And I'm not so sure that it should be something that they have to think about. I think that it should be something that, there are third parties, or there are applications, or there are tools that can help take that burden off of them.
Right.
Because, then there's also, no doctor can sift through, hundreds of pages of records and put them in a chronological order. They just don't have time to do that.
Yes.
And that's really where bringing together the best of the healthcare profession, which, there are some really great things being done out there, and some really wonderful doctors. But again, they don't have time to do all of that laborious work. And that's where the machines can come in and take some of the heavy lifting off of them.
That's I think that's a great place to sort of wrap up here. Now, I want to send you on your way here, but I also want to give you a chance to tell me a little bit about what sorts of things you've got coming on the horizon. Obviously, you have this very large project that we can't talk about, but do you want to sort of plug any like speaking events that you're doing, or any keynotes, or appearances, or any other things that you want to talk about that are coming up for you?
Well, I think, right now it's just keep watching, because this venture is going to be coming out pretty soon, and
Okay.
very excited about it. And
Yeah.
if anyone has any questions or anything like that, they can always find me online. I'm on LinkedIn. You just put Tyler Cohen Wood, Twitter, Tyler Cohen Wood,
Okay.
Facebook, Tyler Cohen Wood.
Okay.
I think I don't use Facebook as much.
Okay. That's not the place to find her, folks. Okay, so you're when you have more details on this new venture, you'll be sort of announcing them in these places.
Oh yes,
Oh
yes.
yes.
We can even do a follow up, so I can talk
Yeah. Yeah, that
about
sounds great.
exactly how it works and what
Mhm.
it will do and what it won't do.
All right. It is an appointment is being set as we speak. All right. So I will wrap up with that. Tyler, thank you so much for being my guest today. This was really, really interesting and fun.
Thank you so much, Chris. I had a great time too.
Well, good. And thank you all, as always, for listening and watching. Just a reminder that new episodes of the Cyberwork podcast are available every Monday at 1 p.m. Central, both on video at our YouTube page and on audio wherever podcasts are downloaded. Also, don't forget to check out our hands-on training series titled Cyberwork Applied. Each week, expert InfoSec instructors teach you a new cybersecurity skill and show you how that skill applies to real-world scenarios. So just go to infosecinstitute.com/learn to stay up to date on all things Cyberwork Applied. Thank you once again to Tyler Cohen Wood, and thank you all again for watching and listening. We will speak to you next week.